So the monster trio has started Elbaf with a bang. Sanji using Ifrit Jambe, Luffy using Gear 4th, and Zoro using Black Rope Dragon Twister. The same attack he used to cut Kaido's scales on the roof that impressed Big Mom and Killer. You guys all remember that. But if you look at Sanji, he used his strongest flame, but not his strongest attack when it comes to Ifrit Jamba. And with Luffy, he actually used Gear 3rd, Elephant Whip, which was strange. He said Gear 4th. Regardless, Oda wants us to really appreciate the monster trio instead of the usual arguments of Zoro versus Sanji, who's stronger, or Luffy versus Zoro. And you get where I'm going with this. So today I will reveal how powerful in the current story of Elbaf are the monster trio and where Oda will have them at the end of the story. So like the video, subscribe to the channel, and let's do a deep dive on Luffy, Zoro, Sanji, the monster trio. Now Sanji before the time skip was pretty powerful, using Diable Jumba to kick some ass literally. But what had us excited for Sanji's post time skip was him using Skywalk on Ivanka's island, confirming he was going to be even more cooler post time skip. And we seen that with Blue Walk in the water versus the Kraken, and then of course Skywalk versus Watatsumi, and of course some cool fiery attacks like Hell's Memories. But things started to get shaky after that, with Virgo cracking his bone when Sanji is known for his martial art. And of course, yeah, I know Virgo is an armament hockey specialist who of course is a HQ vice admiral as well, and of course one of Doflamingo's top commanders. In my opinion, him and Pika were Doflamingo's strongest commanders. Still, it was a bad look for Sanji. It's like what happened recently with Imu eliminating Saturn. Even though he wasn't defeated, he gave a bad performance, and perception is reality. And that's what a lot of fans looked at Punk Hazard Sanji's body not holding up. And I gotta admit, Sanji's body was damaged by Nami before this, and they highlighted this when their bodies were switched. He interacted with Virgo and he wasn't 100%, but it didn't help when Doflamingo an arc later punked Sanji as well in Dressrosa. Yes, Doflamingo said Sanji was pretty powerful, and you might say Doflamingo had Jozu during Marineford in that same stance, and of course Luffy before he did Gear 4th struggling as well. But it was the fact that Sanji had so much expectations going into the time skip that really made us judge him extremely hard. And thus, a lot of people had him definitely being the weak link going into, of course, the Versus Emperor Saga. Now, Zoro before the time skip was also powerful, like oftentimes being compared to Luffy rather than Sanji, which is a great compliment, with 3 sword style elevating with of course Ashura. Zoro nothing happened moment taking Luffy's pain on top of his own really did make him scary and put him into the supernova bounty territory, and eventually the worst generation, as he was being trained by the world's greatest swordsman, so he even had more expectations than Sanji, and he wasn't disappointing, destroying a ship trying to go to the new world and showcasing he had one eye he lost during the time skip. Now of course him destroying that ship was amazing because Mihawk did the similar thing to Don Krieg, but obviously to a different scale. And Oda loved to hype Zoro, like we were having moments of him defeating Hody Jones underwater before the climax of Fishman Island, and then having Zoro clash with an admiral during Dressrosa and Fujitora, and of course eventually showcasing his impressive haki, not only slicing up Pika's large massive self, but also cutting through his full body armored haki. We knew Zoro still had some left in the tank, so going into the Versus Emperor Saga, he was still a big question mark, and that's why we had more hope with Zoro and more disappointment with Sanji. But you would see things change a little bit going into the Versus Emperor Saga. Now Luffy before the time skip was leading the Straw Hat Pirates into stardom, with his of course defeating 2 warlords, and of course CP9's Rob Lucci the Phenom, and earning himself a 300 million berry bounty, with of course his patent Gear 2nd and Gear 3rd carrying him into the War Saga, where he escaped Tempo Down and participated at the War of the Best Marineford, unlocking Conqueror's haki as well. So not bad for the captain of the monster trio, and with Rayleigh training him during the time skip and all 3 types of haki, we already knew Luffy is going to be pulling off some insane feats. When I say this, coming into of course the time skip, his bounty got to 400 million because of his performance in the War Saga, and the feats we saw were like Elephant Gun on the Kraken, or taking down 50,000 fishmen with his Conqueror's haki, or even defeating a steroided up fishman Hody Jones in water with his elephant gatling and almost destroying the Noah as well. And you can't forget to mention him having the voice of all things. After that, Luffy quickly dealt with, of course, Caesar Clown with his Grizzly Magnum, and some people might bring up Luffy taking an L when he lost his oxygen, but I'm going to cut Luffy some slack here and say it was a fluke L. Then he faced his first real challenge in Doflamingo, where his Haki and Gear 2nd and Gear 3rd weren't enough to deal with, of course, the Warlord, forcing him to reveal what at the time he was training during the time skip was, of course, his Gear 4th, which easily dealt with Doflamingo, but of course had big limitations. And I know you guys are probably in the comments saying I'm saying of course too much. I seen the comments from my last video, and of course I'm gonna continue saying it. The big limitations were his no Haki for 10 minutes, but after the 10 minutes, Luffy brought down the hammer with King Kong gun with crazy DC and defeated Doflamingo, a Yonko commander level fighter. Luffy was not playing around and even fought Fujitora at the end of Dressrosa, letting him know he wanted the Yonko and Admirals and he was not running no more, as he's trying to become the Pirate King. What a way to enter the Versus Emperor Saga for Monkey D. Luffy. Now, the Versus Emperor Saga began with highlighting Sanji with Zou and especially Whole Cake Island, but Sanji never really got his power highlight as we thought. Yes, it was getting better since the beginning of the post-time skip, but him fighting his family in Yonji, Niji, and then of course his father, Judge Vinsmoke, showing his Haki was nothing really special. And then him knocking Luffy unconscious also wasn't special because Luffy wasn't fighting back. But I will say it got better with him blocking an attack from Daifuku's genie, and kicking the shit out of Oven was cool. But still, they weren't Big Mom's top commanders. That's why, to me, Sanji's only had 2 cool moments when it comes to power scaling during, of course, this arc. And that was blocking Big Mom's attack alongside Luffy with his strongest Diable Jamba, and his using observation Haki to dodge Big Mom's Vice Captain Katakuri's Jelly Bean attack. This was very badass because Katakuri could see into the future with his observation Haki, and Sanji still evaded the attack, showing how Oda's statement on Zoro being an armored Haki specialist and Sanji being an observation Haki specialist in SBS wasn't being highlighted for no reason. But things got really better in Wano with Sanji wearing that raid suit and playing around with a Flying 6 Ancient Zone in page 1 to throwing hands with Kaido's strongest commander King in the raid suit. But Sanji was the real deal, and yes, the Black Maria moment was bad, but during the Onigashima raid, Sanji in his base form was fighting both King and Queen at the same time. We can't take away from that. We can't take that away from him. And he used his new German genetics to tank Queen's sword attack, breaking it, and his bone crushing attack that he was famous for Queen, Sanji pretty much handled it pretty easily. This bone crushing attack was famous for even having the strongest Amihaki users' bones being broken, but it was no match for Sanji's. But the anime showcased Sanji's greatest moment so well when he combined his awakened Germa power with Armin Haki to bring out the Blue Flames Ifrit Jamba and send Queen packing, defeating a man worth more than 1 billion berries and Kaido's second strongest commander. So Sanji heading into the Final Saga was not someone to mess with. He really was doing some legitimate stuff. Now, Zoro didn't really have much moments during Zoa and wasn't even a character during the Whole Cake Island arc. But man, did he make up for it in Wano. Obviously starting off slow with the Hawkins battle and raising eyebrows, not really showing us anything new. But when he fought Kamazo, aka Killer, and it got distracted, hit with an attack from Kamazo because Gyukimaru, and used Killer's own weapon to beat him, that was raw. And I know Killer didn't have his weapons perfectly, so he was nerfed in a sense. Oda even highlighted that on the rooftop, so there's some legitimacy to that. Now I must admit, Zoro really impressed me on the rooftop using Enma's Odin's sword, having Big Mom shook and her telling Kaido to dodge Zoro's attacks, and later him cutting Kaido's scales with Black Rope Dragon Twister was insane as well. And then he used Ashura for the first time since pre-time skip. This was Zoro's peak we've been waiting for all post-time skipping, and combining it with Enma and unlocking Kankusaki coding as well, he was able to scar Kaido, which was insane of a feat, and Zoro was still disappointed he couldn't knock down Kaido. Later on, Zoro would return to fight the Lunarian King and use his Kankusaki coding to defeat the Vice Captain to Kaido. King of Hell mode Zoro really put Zoro on another level, and I think if he used King of Hell mode, he would have been able to knock down Kaido at least one time, and had us thinking of Mihawk in the battle that Zoro will have to do with the world's greatest swordsman going into the Final Saga. Zoro really improved and put him on the upper echelons in the One Piece story. Now, Luffy, coming off his Doflamingo win, was thrown into the gauntlet during the Whole Cake Island arc, with having to fight his first young commander in Cracker, who cut Gear 4th. And Cracker was probably going to win if it wasn't for Luffy getting help to eventually draw the battle, to the point that Cracker made a mistake and got destroyed by Tank Man in one hit. And then Luffy also fought Big Mom in his Gear 4th form, but she easily was handling him with pretty much basic haki, all leading up to one of the greatest fights for Luffy, which progressed him insanely with Katakuri, where he was getting destroyed in base form and Bounce Man form, and it took Luffy learning Future Sight and his new speed form Snake Man to defeat the Vice Captain to Yonko, which some would say it wasn't nearly a tie, but I digress. Luffy was going into Wano confident, and Kaido quickly stopped that, showing the difference between a Yonko and the Vice Captain to a Yonko by tanking all of Gear 4's strongest attacks and one-shotting Luffy with Kankusaki coding, Thunder Bagua, which led Luffy to trying to learn Advanced Armored Haki from Hyogoro to get past Kaido's scales, and testing it versus Big Mom, which didn't go well, as Big Mom was a Yonko on Kaido's level. Now, I do gotta say this, Luffy eventually used it against Kaido on the rooftop with Red Rock, damaging Kaido for the first time, and having him be compared to some legendary figures: Roger, Whitebeard, Rocks, Kozuki Oden, and Red Hair Shanks. Luffy would go Gear 4th with Advanced Armored Haki and lay down the Gatling, and then of course go ham on Kaido, and then of course we have unlocking Kankusaki coding and fighting in his base form with the strongest creature alive, mixing in his advanced 3 types of haki and his Bounce Man and Snake Man form as well. Luffy was really reaching his peak, fighting the strongest creature alive until he lost because it was a distraction, and that awakened his Delver ability, the name Sun God Nika, the same power Joy Boy had, and beat Kaido with his awakening and advanced Conqueror's Haki and Armored Haki, truly becoming Yonko level in one arc and foreseeable arcs as we head into the Final Saga. With the Final Saga, Sanji hasn't had an official fight during Egghead Island, but he has had moments where he is fighting the top of the top in Saturn, where he took an attack and got back up to fight the Gorosei, and then fought Kizaru alongside Gear 5th Luffy for a bit, and even shocking Kizaru by obliterating his light beam speed attack, and then of course had a run-in with Venus Drill where he got a nice attack in, and then finally did a combo attack on Mars alongside Luffy, Bonnie, and Frankie. All in all, Oda was throwing Sanji against opponents with insane power, and he was able to throw hands, and even being disappointed in Zoro for not finishing his fight faster, showing how much he views the monster trio in his own right as they reach top tier status. Now, Zoro during the Final Saga fought CP0's strongest agent, Rob Lucci, Luffy's former opponent during Eddie's Lobby, and some would say even Luffy's greatest fight of all time. And the reason why this battle was so important wasn't because of Lucci being an awakened Zoan who just, of course, fought his captain earlier. It was because of Enies Lobby's statement by Frankie saying if Luffy didn't fight Lucci, they would all be dead, showing how much Zoro has improved to not only fight Lucci, but mess him up pretty badly. Though I must admit, Lucci still stood up after Zoro's deadly attack, showing how much Zoro wasn't fighting a scrub. He was fighting a legit fighter, and even Jinbei knew this word when he interrupted. Zoro real challenge when he ran into Venus Juro, the mythical Zoan swordsman with a famous blade, and able to cut the top of Egghead Island in half, a feat similar to Mihawk cutting the iceberg in half during Marineford. So casually, yeah, Oda is making it more known he wants Zoro to be one of the strongest near the end of the story. Now finally, let's talk about Luffy, the main character, and the journey in the beginning of the Final Saga, which had him, of course, do his first move as a Yonko in Egghead Island, an incident where he kicked things off by fighting his former rival Rob Lucci, who awakened his Zoan Delver ability and got stronger with his haki and kept his mind intact, which impressed Vegapunk. But Luffy almost knocked him unconscious while not even trying, and Luffy started the first Yonko vs Admiral fight since Whitebeard and Akano during Marineford with his clash with Kizaru from the Conqueror's haki coding kick in his base form that he dealt to Kizaru, which Kizaru blocked, showing Kizaru how he fought Kaido with his Snake Man form with all his advanced hakis versus the man who could move with the speed of light. But things got real serious once Luffy brought Gear 5th, from one punch to the head, having Kizaru unable to move, to fighting Kizaru and the Gorosei Saturn at the same time, and taking Kizaru out of the battle entirely. Though some would say Kizaru took himself out of the battle, regardless, Luffy continued by going at it with the Gorosei, and though Luffy did do a lot of combo attacks like he did versus Mars with Bonnie, Sanji, and Frankie, or the Bonnie double attack to obliterate Sanji, not Sanji, I mean Saturn. The thing that was a little off was Luffy couldn't hurt Workery with his strongest moves in Gear 5th and his strongest haki, though the Iron Giant did. All in all, Luffy left Egghead Island fighting the strongest of the strongest CP0 agent, the strongest post-time skip admiral. Since Akano's the fleet admiral, I'm not putting him in that category. And then Luffy fought all the Gorosei and didn't even go all out. Yeah, that's my Yonko. So if I'm being real, going into Elbaf, I have Luffy at officially Kaido and Big Mom level, aka Yonko level. Because Luffy had a lot of help initially in Wano fighting Kaido, but after Egghead Island, Luffy is getting much better with his haki and Delver ability that he recently learned, and I have to give him respect. I have Zoro at, of course, Rono Zoro is Admiral level, aka Fujitora Green Bull level. And then I have Sanji at in between Admiral level and a Vice Captain to a Yonko level. Now that's a real strong top 3 that's about to progress even more in Elbaf with this Savage Island and next level opponents waiting for the Monster Trio, or should I say the Monster Quartet, once Usopp becomes a brave warrior of the sea in Elbaf. And so when it comes to end of story, Luffy will be above Pirate King. He's going to surpass Goldie Roger. Zoro will be Yonko level, surpassing Dracula Mihawk and being the same level, and maybe surpassing Silver's Rayleigh prime level. And then, of course, Sanji will be, of course, in between a Yonko level and an Admiral level, and maybe even reaching Yonko level. And this might shock you, but Usopp might reach Admiral level and be able to take out Green Bull. But that's just another video for another day and might completely break your guys' mind. If you enjoyed this video, watch the Garb Rescue video I just dropped. That was really done well, and it's really good, guys.